Hello there.
Hey, what's up, Zach?
Oh, nothing much. Just want to talk about this cool movie that you made. Isn't it great when you make
Awesome.
a movie?
Making a movie is just there's nothing like it.
I mean, you spent a lot of time, you honed your craft, as they say, on television, then you made the Weird Al movie.
Yes.
Um, Tell me about the transition. Is it the same tool set, but you get more takes, or is it more complicated than
Yeah.
that?
I think it's a very similar tool set. Um, but you get more creative control, really is what it is. Like on TV, you're stepping into somebody else's shoes, really. You're walking to it's the showrunner's show, you're walking onto their set. Oftentimes, depending on if if you're doing a pilot, it's a little bit different. If you're doing a first season episode, it's a little bit different. But my first episode of I had done a couple of cable pilots. I did an MTV show and an Adult Swim show. My first network TV experience was on The Office, and that was like the eighth season of the show. So it's like every actor had already directed an episode at that point. So walking into an environment like that, you're kind of there to just like technically execute, make sure you're getting all of the coverage that you need, and to, so, add some of your own personality into things and your own ideas. Um, but like the approval process is like, even if you have your own idea on something, this is an idea that I have to run by the showrunner and I have to say, can I do it this way? Here's my idea for how I'm going to do it. And they could either say yes or no. Um, on a movie, on a movie, it's kind of different depending on what kind of movie you're making too. Like on Weird, the Roku channel ultimately was, financing it, but they were pretty hands off, and it was treated a little bit more like an independent film. And so I could kind of do whatever I wanted on that movie. The Breadwinner being a studio comedy, there's like a little more studio oversight. Um, so there's just more layers of people that you have to make sure everyone's cool with it this way before you do it. And me being a first time studio director, maybe I had to do a little bit more work during prep to explain this is exactly how my vision is going to be for this. And then once they start seeing footage and they're getting dailies and they're happy with everything that they're seeing, then it's like, go cook, dude.
Mm,
but but it's definitely more creatively rewarding and a lot more fun for me to make films. And that's definitely, you know, the space that I want to live in for as long as I can.
sure. Your work has, run the gamut from, reasonably family friendly stuff to stuff that's a little bit raunchier.
Yeah.
This is definitely firmly in the PG category. Tell me a little bit about did it kind of just happen to work out that way, or did you have ideas that were like, oh, I'm gonna have to save this for the R-rated version sometime down the line?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that we shot that were like a little more risque. I will say like a light PG-13, more than a PG. And we made the decision to not include those things in the movie because we wanted people from ages 8 to 80 to see this movie and have no moments where on the ride home kids are going to have to ask their parents like, hey, what did they mean by that? And then you're going to have to get into an awkward conversation. And you know there there's a thing with like Nate's comedy. Nate works as a clean comic, and but like that doesn't mean that his comedy is like lame. Like it
Right.
doesn't mean that it's like he's really funny. He just works clean and it works for all audiences, but it's still just as funny as something that's edgier, just like without that edge, without that dirty edge, or more risque edge. And that's kind of what I thought about the movie. I'm like, this movie will feel, it's not going to feel lame, even though it's PG. It's going to, at the end of the movie, you'll go, oh, yeah, there were no swear words in that movie. Like that's, but you're not gonna. It's something that I don't want people to be conscious of while they're watching it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned him, so let's talk about the Nate of it all.
Yes.
Um, he wrote the movie or co-wrote the movie. And it's your vision, but you're working with, as director, it's your vision, but you're working with the co-writer and star. Tell me about how often you butted heads and say, "No, this is the shot. No, this is the shot." I'm sure it was just nonstop
Yeah,
goats,
Nate
with
seems
the
like he
horns.
seems like a very confrontational guy, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. Nate was like very trust. This is his first movie he's ever done. Um, uh, so much so, like day one, he's like, "Do I get to go home for lunch? Do I like what's the call sheet?" Oh, we don't. He was surprised to find that we like didn't shoot in sequence.
Ah,
So like yeah, that's kind of where Nate was at as far as like the filmmaking side of things. Um, so we didn't ever butt heads on anything as far as the technique went, or how I'm going to cover a scene, or how I'm going to shoot it, or you know this is all one take, this is all he was eager to learn, and was just very open to and trusting, and open to how I wanted to shoot something. um as far as like the script went, yeah, there were certain things that, never really butted heads. It was more just like discussions that, if Nate and I saw things slightly different ways, finding the commonality between what we both thought, but we were really swimming in the same direction, for most of this. And I have, Nate has a daughter, who's 13 years old. My daughter, I have two daughters, 14 and 11. We are both the breadwinners of our families. Our wives handle the things that we don't necessarily like have the bandwidth to handle. But we're both like good dads and good partners, we feel. And
we'll
so
have to
that,
ask. We'll have to ask the partners themselves to verify.
yeah. But like, we're never like, I don't want to do that. That's your place to do that. We're eager to like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. And then when we actually get to doing it, it's like, I don't have all the tools that I need to do this. And that's kind of like the character in the movie, he's very eager to help. That's kind of the movie's a real throwback, right, to like these types of movies that used to come out in like the 80s and 90s, these family comedies that are about more like domestic issues, right, and like family relationships. And I think the big difference with ours is that Nate is just like a very willing and eager to go along and do all of this. It's more about him realizing all the invisible work that his wife does that she just doesn't necessarily make him aware of, and less about him begrudgingly learning to do something that he didn't want to do.
Sure. Now I am, he's I gotta say, a very natural actor. I thought he did a really good job in
Awesome.
this. But I imagine the idea is if he didn't, at least you have a game supporting cast. You surround him with Will, Colin, Martin, Kumail,
Yeah.
etc. Um, who are all, scene stealers in their own right, but he's game to play with them in a really funny way. Um, Tell me about just like the casting process and being like, do we want funny actors playing, these domestic kind of characters, or do you want like the airplane approach of getting a straight faced guy? Tell me about your philosophy in this realm.
Yeah, I mean you really hit the nail on the head, right? These actors were a bit of a safety net, right? We're like, let's cast a bunch of comedians. Nate has not done this before, not only because we know that these people are all going to be they're proven to be funny in movies and in scripted material like this. But also, they all speak the same language of comedy that Nate speaks, right? So, we knew I like to stick to the script, but leave a little bit of room to improvise and to have fun with it, and to, we're always writing, whether it's the night before we're shooting a scene and me and Nate are bouncing pages back and forth and rewriting something, or writing on the set, which really is what improv is. Um, so we wanted to surround him with performers that he would be that are so comfortable doing that kind of thing. Um, and he's so great in interviews, and he's great like off the cuff, um, and has such a great comedic mind that we thought if we put all of these great comedians around them, some of which he knew and had worked with before. He'd done SNL a couple of times with Colin. They're friends outside of that. Um, Nate and Kumail came up together doing stand up in Chicago. Nate told me the first time he was ever written about in the paper was like in an article about Kumail,
Huh.
where they also mentioned that they saw Nate Bargatze that night, and he was great too. And Kate Berlant, he like knew from doing stand up back in the day, and yeah, so surrounding him, and everyone loves Will Forte. You can't like Forte is great. Whoever he's in a scene with, he's just such like a beam of light and positivity that I would say like that's the key to making a good movie. Put Will Forte somewhere in the movie, and like you could coast off those vibes for the entire shoot.
I interviewed Will Forte and I was so intimidated for no reason because he was so kind and like not on, but I was
Yeah.
so worried that like he was gonna start an exercise with me or something. Like a yes and I'm just like, oh God, I don't know. I'm not funny. Ah.
Oh man, yeah, but he like immediately disarm. He's very disarming, like he's just so. Yeah, he's just such a good dude. Um, but yeah, the cat, it was just amazing surrounding Nate with all of these people, and it was like Nate was very quick to take to it. I remember on the first day we shot the car dealership stuff first, and it was him, Kumail, and Zach Cherry, and those guys immediately out of the gate are like improvising on take one, and Nate's like, "Are we? Is it cool? Are we allowed to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Yes, yes."
Yeah,
Um,
no, those scenes are hilarious.
awesome.
The mug
Thanks.
is company property,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah. Yeah, the fact I love that that was one of the funniest things. It wasn't necessarily in the script before we cast Zach Cherry. That character of Dan, his like supervisor at work, was just a little I don't want to say bland, but like a little more straightforward.
The
And when Zach,
facilitator for the comedy.
yeah, yeah, and when Zach came in, he was like, would love if there was a little something more to this guy. So we came up with, that he treats it like he's like a jaded lover. When Nate when Nate takes a little bit of time off work, he's like, "You were my guy, but you've left me," and yeah, it's just very, very funny, and yeah, it was a joy to work with all these guys.
So tell me, for you as a director, but with an improv background, you know, I know you have a whole script. It's written from start to finish, but you've kind of hinted at it. But tell me a little bit about just the idea of this is not set in stone. We can do whatever we want once the cameras are rolling. Or maybe you have one for safety that's just like we can make the one-to-one movie version of this script. but then we can actually make a comedy. Not
Right,
that the
right.
script wasn't funny. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it sort of like depends on what scene it is, you know? Like there's your heartfelt scenes, you know, there's certain scenes that are like just really important for story to get like a certain piece of information across that like don't necessarily call for any improv at all. Um, the funny thing with comedians is there's the instinct at the end of every scene to improvise, and you get into editing and you have all these incredibly funny things that you end up having to cut because you're just like the scene's over. Like just for the pacing of the movie, I have to move past this. If we hang out for another joke, we're like ruining our flow into the next scene. Um, but like there's certain combinations of people that we put together, like Kate Berlant and Colin Jost, like the scene with them where you're just like, all right, let's get what's on the page, but like on the first take, and then let's just let them cook for the rest of the takes, you know? So like there's a line where she's like, oh, Connor's never invented everything. And he's like, oh, maybe someday. Wife poison.
That's
You know, and
exactly
she's
the
like,
inst- that's
yeah, and like
exactly what I was gonna say.
that is Colin improvising that line, you know? So there's like
But
a
he
lot
wouldn't.
of, yeah, yeah. He's like, no, I would never would. Which we cut off too. That keeps going. He goes, "No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't know how." And then she's like, "Yeah, that's like you. You never try to figure out anything you don't know how to already do." And like, but we're like, "Okay, the scene is over. The scene is over." But like there's also like little things, there's moments, there's also like improvised moments where maybe things weren't necessarily on the page, but you just want to I like creating these scenes where things feel real and alive and natural, and it's not just talking heads back and forth. And you know, in particular, like when on Nate's first day on the job, when Katie is giving him instructions and he's made breakfast for the first time, and like he's buzzing around the room, and the kids are all eating breakfast, you know, and she's walking him around, giving him all these instructions. That's the kind of scene where I'm like, we're moving all over the place, and like, let's, you know, the kids have their scripted lines, but I'm like, just feel free to, if you want to talk over each other or throw something in, you know, just to keep everything feeling alive. So there's improv in that where the girls are like pretending to just still eat breakfast and argue with each other in the background. When Charlotte, who plays Sam, the little one, you know, when they all hug Mandy goodbye and she goes, "We're all gonna die." That was her improvising that.
It's
She was
hard
a
to find a
kill.
6-year-old with an improv background.
Oh man, she was incredible. Like we shot with her. We were like, this is like how they must have felt in Uncle Buck shooting with Macaulay Culkin, where they were like, okay, now let's make Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin because he was so good in Uncle Buck. Um, yeah, so like that's me. I'm looking for my like, what's my Charlotte movie?
So just very quick before we go, tell me a little bit about, they say the rule is not to work with children or animals. You got horses and three girls between, 5 or 6 and early teens. Just tell me a little bit about realizing that they were so good. Because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are. They're great.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean that part of that came from the audition process. Jeannie and Nicole, our casting directors, were incredible at finding all of these kids, putting the ones in front of us that they thought were really great. We did multiple rounds of callbacks with all of them over Zoom and got to know them a little bit. Um, which for me is just like it almost isn't even the part where they're delivering their lines. It's like talking to them. It's like the little interviews I did with them beforehand, where you get a sense of who they are and how they interact with someone they don't know, making small talk with them. And then we brought a group of girls to Atlanta to do chemistry reads with Nate. And we put them and we like reordered them. We put every different combination of girls that we could. We had six of them with us. And then, ultimately landed on the three that we did. And then before we filmed, I was like, let's go bowling. Me and Nate and the girls should all go bowling together. And it was like, 2 nights before we started filming. And we went out, we went bowling and went to this like uh, black light dinosaur themed miniature golf complex and just like hung with the kids. We gave each other all funny nicknames when we filled out our bowling, our bowling cards, and just like played around and goofed off. Like Nate and I both have daughters around that same age. We know how to interact with these kids, and we're like fun dads. And so by the time we showed up on set, the vibes were like so good. And Nate's first scene with the kids was when he's driving them to school and the volcano goes off. So our first big day of working with the girls was Nate and me and the kids trapped in this minivan for like 5 hours, because we kept having to move the camera around and one kid would have to leave to get coverage on the others. And it really gave me a chance to like play around with them and like, just get everybody so loose and so comfortable that by the time it like really came to get to the meat of it with them, they truly felt like a real family. We already built that family vibe, and they're so great in the movie. I'm like so proud of the performances that the kids give, and everyone that's seen it so far are including Mandy Moore was like the girls are so incredible in this movie, and I love it. I'm so happy about it, and I hope they all become like superstars.
Yeah.